Hello there, and welcome to the CP7 podcast. My name's Palm.
And I'm Andy.
And together, we are Chrono Passion 7. Hello, and welcome back to your favourite watch-related podcast. Today, we're going to talk about the ultimate in sophistication in the watch world, Patek Philippe. We're going to talk to two people who are steeped in the world of this unbelievable brand. We have John Reardon and Tania Edwards from the Collectability Podcast. Welcome to the show, guys.
Hello. Thank you so much, Parm. Thank you, Andy, for having us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
It's absolutely great to have you guys on the show. We have so many questions lined up, but the most important question before we kick the show off, of course, is what are you wearing today, and who wants to go first?
Ladies first.
I'll go first. Ladies first.
Yeah, the woman who taught a generation about Patek Philippe, you can go first.
Thank you. Well, it won't be a surprise to a lot of people who know John and I and Collectability, but I am wearing an Ellipse. I am wearing a 3848 in white gold. And what's different about this Ellipse, even though it's a classic Ellipse, is that it is on a very unusual bracelet. It was originally on a leather strap. I do have the original leather strap. It was made in 1990, and it's on a very funky looking, modern looking bracelet made by Reto Kepler and Hans Kern, who are jewelers in Zurich. And I just absolutely love it. It's one of my most favorite watches, and I acquired it when John and I started Collectability, and it means a lot to me because ellipses represent collectability for John and I. So this is a watch I absolutely love.
What a piece.
Beautiful piece, yeah. That bracelet's so cool as well.
Cool, yeah. It turns it almost into
the bracelet is really cool. It's unbelievable.
It's like art, really, for the wrist. Yeah,
it is, absolutely. And I'm personally very fond. I like very classic Pateks, but I also like really funky, unusual ones. So it suits both for me.
Superb choice. So, John, how do you lead on from that one?
Wow. I didn't know this would be the opening question. So you caught me off guard, but wearing a watch that I wear more than any other timepiece. And that is my reference 5064 Aquanaut. Now, this particular piece is near and dear to my heart because it's the first Patek Philippe watch I ever bought. And it was while working with Tania at Henry Stern Watch Agency, which is Patek Philippe USA. I was a road warrior and had to visit retailers. And interestingly, Patek Philippe does not give even its sales team loaner watches or any Patek Philippe to have on the road when selling the brand. So you have to buy your own Patek Philippe if you want to have one of their watches, saving every bit of money I could. And the least expensive Patek Philippe at that time was this quartz Aquanaut 5064A. And at that point, there was an employee discount. The retail of the watch was under $6,000 retail to the public. So you can imagine it was a very reasonable purchase for me at the time. But I'll tell you, that money hurt. Every dollar hurt so much to spend at that point in time. So forget about every other amazing Patek Philippe I've ever had my hands on or the pleasure of wearing. This one's the most meaningful to me because there's blood, sweat, and tears in this watch. And this is the one that's going with me till the very end.
Wow, what a story.
Yeah, full of history.
I think every watch has a story. I mean, no matter which brand it is, isn't it? I mean, watches are so personal. I could tell you long stories about every single piece I own because they're so important to me. And I'm sure I know that's how you two feel. Yeah. And I know it's how John feels.
No, I just want to go on about the Aquanaut. It's nice to see because Aquanaut's quite a modern watch, really. But mind you, what year was that one?
2002 was when this...
Okay, so it's kind of, does that come under neo vintage? Or no, it's not really vintage, but I'm surprised. But it's a nice, pleasant surprise as well, because I generally do like modern watches. I appreciate vintage immensely, but it's really made me smile.
The fact that it's 23 years old now is just deeply troubling to me. I can't believe that I'm wearing a watch that's considered neo vintage. That's hilarious. But it's true. I mean, that's just the new reality. So every watch will be a vintage watch someday. I think we all have to remember that. Every watch will be
It looks awesome. Exactly. And Andy, I'm going to ask Andy what he's wearing next. There's a special reason why I'm asking, because there's no point in me going next because I cannot compete with you guys. But Andy, what are you wearing today?
In the spirit of this very special show which we are recording today, I'm also wearing a beautiful solid gold Ellipse on a gold bracelet. So representing.
Bravo!
And it's the 3748-1, which Paluco very kindly loaned to me. If that wasn't enough, they also loaned the same reference again, but on the black leather strap.
Oh, beautiful.
And the really cool thing with the gold, like the old gold piece, is that it came with the original case. And I've never seen the old Ellipse cases. And what I really picked up on was the theme of Ellipse throughout, like the watches, the Ellipse, the case, and then just the quality of the finishing of the leather inside is so soft. I'm like, I know it sounds a bit cliche, but just don't make things like this anymore, like to this quality. So it was really nice to just get a hands-on experience the package properly. Even original tags in here as well. So yeah, from my side, just a huge thank you to Mark and Carlos over at Paluco. I'll drop all their details in there. And yeah, now I have to try not to buy one of these watches, which is going to be difficult. But that's what I'm wearing.
We need to get Andy to buy one. None of this loan nonsense, right?
Well, this is Mark's personal watch for now. Let's see when we have a coffee tomorrow.
No pressure to our friend Carlos at Paluco, who we love.
Yeah.
But I think we have to say on the public record, he needs to do everything he can to make sure that Andy keeps that watch and puts it on his wrist.
Exactly, yeah.
And
when this show comes out, Carlos will be messaging me now.
Exactly.
And Mark, I'll have both of them attacking me.
But you might have bought it by then.
Can't go wrong with an Ellipse.
But yeah, fantastic. Really, I think it's great as well because as I listen to all the amazing stories which you guys be sharing with us, I've just been getting lost in the essence of Patek all the way through it now, thanks to these pieces. But I could talk about it forever, but it's not about me today. So I'll pass over to Palm and quickly, which Patek are you wearing today, Palm?
But it's not about me at all because I don't have a Patek. But I have a Patek book, if that makes any. That's the only thing I've got. But I am I'm wearing the Breitling Navitimer A23322. It's from 2006. It has the value 7754 movement in it. I love the panda dial configuration. I love the slide rule. I don't know how to use it yet. I cannot figure out how to convert currencies on it yet. I don't know how to work out the tip on it yet at a restaurant. But apparently I have to look forward to all of that. And it's on a Rios 1931 brown pilot strap. And I've got to say, I am quite enamored by it. But I do feel a little bit overawed today, but I shouldn't. So that's what I've got on my wrist. Okay, so let's move into our questions now. And this is to both you, Tania and John. First thing, let's talk about yourselves and how did you get into watches? Then the whole Patek. Why Patek? I mean, for you, what did Patek mean to you? And then how did that evolve into this incredible podcast called Collectability? I mean, and you also sell them, but let's talk about the podcast and then you can go into the rest of it.
I first got involved with Patek Philippe because I was working for a PR agency and they were pitching the business for the company's 150th anniversary. And what normally happens in an agency when you're pitching new business is you have a brainstorming session, and they sent out this request to everybody. And I heard people in the office saying Patek Philippe, and nobody could pronounce it properly. And I happened to know how to pronounce it properly because I had actually been to Patek in Geneva when I was at university as a teenager. And so I said, well, look, I know how to pronounce it and I'll explain that to you. So that meant that I was on the business. It was all happened very quickly, but I had already known about Patek because when I was at university, I was going out with a guy whose father was a Swiss watchmaker, and he introduced me to Patek Philippe because I needed to understand what the world's finest watch was all about. And I can assure you, trying to explain to a 19-year-old what the world's finest watch is. Didn't make much sense at the time, but I realized how extraordinary these pieces were. And after leaving Patek on Rue de Rhône, I sat down and shown the collection. I said, one day I will own one of these. And my friend said, yes, you will. So that was a prediction that I could never have imagined would come true, that not only would I own one, I'd own quite a few, but I'd also devote my career to Patek Philippe. It was fortuitous.
Living the dream.
That way. It was in the stars. It was meant to be.
I wish my stars were like that.
So anyway, we won the business. I got to know the Stern family and the New York office, because this was in New York at the time. So I was very lucky. I got to know everybody that worked at Patek, and they offered me a job as marketing director. And that's how I ended up working in-house for Patek Philippe. And I guess my main claim to fame is the ad campaign, You Never Actually Own a Patek, You Merely Take Care of It for the Next Generation, which came about because I kept saying to the then president of the company, Philippe Stern, that we needed to change the advertising. And he said that if I thought I could do better, then I was to go ahead and do so. So that's how it all happened.
There you go. That's quite a feather in your cap, I'd say.
It was a lucky time. It was the early 90s and the company was much, much smaller then. And I had direct access to Philippe Stern, and he is a very generous man. And because the company was so much smaller, it was easy to say to people who worked with you, yes, okay, you go and sort it out. That wouldn't happen today, I don't think, because it's a very big company now with teams of people at different levels. So I was just very fortunate to be there at the right time. And being British,
yep,
as you can hear in my accent, I felt very strongly that the best advertising at the time came from the UK. And Philippe Stern very kindly let me go and look for an agency in London. And we were very fortunate to find Ligas Delaney, who came up with that genius tagline, you never actually own a Patek, you merely take care of it for the next generation. And that is still running today, almost 30 years later. So that's bravo to the agency, obviously. And when you've got a good line, you keep it.
Yeah, why not? Why not? John, how about yourself?
I'd like to share a story that I've never shared publicly before. And Tania, I've never shared with you before, too. Because
okay, we have a first. Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. This will be interesting. Why didn't you save it for our podcast?
Because this is like of the moment, because I'm watching a show called The White Lotus.
Yeah.
And this brought back some memories of before I entered the museum world, and a decade before I entered the auction world. And this is going back to when I think I was 12 years old. And my sister, very bizarre set of circumstances, was living in Bangladesh. So we wanted to meet her for Christmas. Stay with me here. This makes sense. So my parents took me to Bangkok, Thailand. My sister flew over from Dhaka so that we could spend Christmas together when I was just a little kid. And when we first arrived, I was so tired. It was my first time to Asia. And with the time change, you know how it is. We wanted to just go. We were like wandering the streets at night in Bangkok, the quintessential American family. So I remember the first thing, and my dad, who's no longer with us, he wanted to have a good meal after we arrived in Bangkok. I mean, and even then I was like, oh, it could be pad thai or something. And he's like, no, we're going to go get Kentucky Fried Chicken. Yes, because that's exactly what you get when you fly around the world to have an exotic local meal at KFC. So there was a 24-hour KFC. I see Tanya's eyes rolling, like, where is he going with this? And my mom and I walked down a street, and if you know what I'm talking about, shame on you, called Patpong. You familiar with Patpong in Bangkok? This is the heart of the red light district of Bangkok. Let's just say for a 12-year-old, this was eye-opening for me, and but I wasn't looking up at all of the lights and all of the action that was going. I was looking down because on the streets, they were selling every fake watch imaginable in these midnight markets. And at that point of time, like a dream watch, remember the Gucci's that were famous in the 80s with the interchangeable straps. So I was like, oh, I could be the coolest middle schooler ever with my fake Gucci. And then I remember looking at all the Rolexes, fake Rolexes, interesting. But then I saw this simple round watch, and I looked at the dial, and it was a brand I never heard of before. And it said Patek Philippe. I probably pronounced it as, who knows.
Wow, really?
And it was a simple time only. And I picked it up and I showed it to my mother. And I was like, I know this is fake, but someday I'm going to own one of these.
John, that's amazing.
And this really came back to me recently, watching The White Lotus. I was like, you know what? I was introduced to the brand through a fake watch on the ground on Patpong in Thailand. And it just was really, it's incredible.
In the Bangkok red light district.
Wow.
Yes.
That's probably the least glamorous story I've heard. Patek Philippe.
Exactly.
But it planted the seed. Yeah.
So I really wanted to save that story to share with the world today, for your listeners to have the inside scoop of how I was introduced to the brand.
I cannot believe you haven't shared that before. I cannot believe it.
But after that, I think I need to go back to Bangkok now. It'd be fantastic. So
in so many ways, yes.
it was a discovery, we'll call it. It was a coming of age story, but not the one you were expecting. So after that, I ended up in Bristol, Connecticut. My hometown is where there's an amazing watch and clock museum. And it was right after that I started volunteering there. And that's where my horological journey commenced. And fast forward to today. Tanya and I have been, working together now in one capacity or another for well over, 25 years. And now Collectability is now 5 years old. And the stories keep adding up and the adventures just keep continuing.
Yeah, exactly. That's quite a really fun, cool story. I love family stories and journey stories. That's what makes this whole watch thing, like you alluded to earlier on, Tanya, about the connection you have with a watch or a brand or just something, just that if something takes you back to a happier time, there's nothing more magical than that. And watches do that for us. But just out of interest, what was your first actual watch? It may not have been a Patek, but what was your first watch?
My first proper watch.
Proper one, yeah.
Was a calendar chronograph watch by Oscar Walden, Walden International. Okay. And we've lost Oscar, it seems like recently, but it was probably 5-6 years ago. And his son, Andrew Walden, is actually continuing his father's legacy, called Walden International, which are American quartz-made watches. And Oscar Walden was a Holocaust survivor and a very important collector and dealer and watchmaker who's active in the New York scene in the 1990s. And speaking to those that were active in the vintage scene in the 80s and 70s, way before me, also very aware of Oscar Walden. He's a legend and will never be forgotten. And I wanted to have one of his watches. They were being sold at that time by Tourneau in New York. And he did custom label watches for a number of different brands. But I wanted one that said his name, Walden International. Knowing his story and knowing his passion for watchmaking, having one of his watches, which looked amazingly like a 3970, no coincidence, was the watch of my dreams. And this would be going back to 1998. That was my first true watch.
Interesting. I wasn't expecting that. But yeah, nice, really, really great choice. Really nice story. Tanya, yourself, I know you heard of Patek Philippe when you were in Geneva, but what was the first watch you actually bought? Like let's say proper watch. I'll do air quotes.
Well, I can't say that I bought a proper watch, meaning a fine timepiece, not even a Patek. But when I was a teenager and in my early 20s, I loved the Fiorucci watches talking about Gucci that had the interchangeable plastic bracelets on them. So I remember having like bright pink, turquoise, just really fun watches. And I just wore fun watches until I worked for Patek Philippe. And that was when I got my first proper watch. I know it sounds very cliched and probably something you don't believe, but after having heard John's story about Bangkok, I think we should believe anything now.
You need to pull this back in, yeah.
I mean, really, who knew? But honestly, I think because at a young age I'd seen the Patek Philippe collection, and I just decided that that was what I was going to have one day, and so I didn't buy or invest in a proper watch until I could own my own Patek, and that's the truth. I wore fun, funky watches that were fashionable, but I never wore a proper watch.
That's really impressive. You didn't sully that dream then, because we all get caught in, you know what, I need this while I need to get that, but on the way there I'm going to buy this one, and then I'm going to buy that one, and you never end up getting the one that you really wanted because you've bought 6 or 7 along the way. But yeah, bravo to you.
Yeah, I was very stubborn and I just waited. But I had fun. Yeah. I had fun with watches.
Yeah,
until then.
The dream,
yes,
I think, right,
I still do have fun with watches, but now I'm very lucky.
Well, there you go.
Oh, yeah. We're John and I are very blessed. We know that. We're very blessed because we deal with very beautiful things every day, and occasionally we might buy one, but it's very dangerous what we do.
Yeah, I can imagine. I really can imagine, but I think it's a valuable lesson there as well, because I'm very guilty myself of, look, I should really save for that, but I buy this. It's similar, but it doesn't ever fill that void. You end up buying something, wasting the money away, selling it for half a price because you get bored of it, and then you get further and further away from the actual watch you really wanted. So I think that's good advice for any listeners who are
just
beginning their journeys,
wait
at least.
until you get what you really want. You just have to be patient.
Get the real deal.
That's something that John and I deal with every single day, is helping people find their dreams and treasure hunting. And often it takes time. And I'm not just talking about sitting on a wait list waiting for a modern Patek. The best part about collecting vintage is the treasure hunt, is the looking for it. And that can take time, but it's worth it because that journey makes it an incredible experience. And there's always a story. Was that fair,
Absolutely.
John? Do you think that's fair?
And it comes down to every watch having a story, and you're writing your story of your watch in your treasure hunt, and it doesn't matter what the watch is. It's it's an adventure, and that's what I love. That talking to new collectors or collectors been doing this for 70 years, the story is the same, and that adrenaline kick we have in that hunt is what this is often it's all about. And when we fall in love with that watch that we need to find.
Yeah, I think that's I did have another question, but a quick one, just staying on this topic, because I don't think like a great example would be a collector like Ronnie M. I think we all know Ronnie, right? And he collects a very specific kind of Patek, the double stamps, right? And sometimes maybe as a non-collector of this particular kind of watch, you'd be looking and think to yourself, well, they'll kind of look the same. But he finds that thrill in chasing, I want the Patek Cartier stamp dial, I must have that, and then I must have the same reference, but with a different... So do you think it's, for these kind of vintage collectors, you think that's modern collectors, it's the AD games and that's what they get addicted to, but for vintage people who are really deep into that rabbit hole, it's the thrill of that chase, right? Of just finding that ultra rare watch. And do they ever find satisfaction, or does it just keep going, the hunt?
For a collector like Ronnie, who's not only sophisticated, he's educated and has such an eye as he evolves on his collecting journey. He knows what he's looking for specifically. So for some, it looks like they're all the same kind of watch, but for him, they could be a world apart. Every piece is completely different. And one thing that I really love about his social media and is that he's sharing this journey with all of us. Mm. So frankly, every day I'm looking for him too. I was like, if someone offers me, I'm like, that's a Ronnie watch. And I think the whole collecting community almost cheers for him because in a way his taste is kind of imprinted on the marketplace and moved prices. So thanks for that. But in the same way, he's helped educate people to look at things a little differently. So I underline the point again, that yes, they look very similar, but one reference can have so many different nuances in condition, design, production, that they're a world apart. And I imagine it's the same for car collectors, guitar collectors, or probably even wine collectors or wine connoisseurs. That nuance is where the pleasure lives.
Yeah, it's all in the detail and finding. Yeah, I think that's a good way to summarize it. But to people outside of that world, it's kind of don't quite get that.
Oh, we're all crazy. We're certifiably crazy individuals.
There's no sanity.
Each and every one of us.
Yes. Yeah, there's no sanity in this hobby.
Just one thing for the listeners. Ronnie M. Check out Ronnie M on Instagram if you don't know who we're talking about. He is an amazing Patek, AP, you name it. He collects the most amazing vintage watches. And yeah, check him out on Instagram, RONI and the letter M. And if you want to see all the watches we're talking about, check out our website at www.chronopassion7.com, where you'll see our show notes with all of these amazing Patek Philippes that we've been talking about today.
Brilliant. Yeah, make sure you do that. So going back to my original question, which I had planned, is going back to the Ellipse. My question is, what makes it so special? And maybe I've answered the question myself, but for our listeners as well. What makes it so special to a Patek collector? But then I kind of get the feeling to general watch collectors, maybe it's a little misunderstood or overlooked still as far as a Patek goes. So what's special to a Patek collector, and why do you think it's overlooked by mainstream collectors?
So 5 years ago when Collectability was founded, because this is before Tanya came in, just after, so I became we very quickly, but we were looking for something that really told the story of Patek Philippe, something iconic. And everyone at that point, it was all about Nautilus, which Nautilus is wonderful, but it's just one small segment of Patek Philippe's full storyline. And colleagues of that Tanya and I worked with at Patek Philippe, so I'm thinking of some of the older colleagues that we worked with, in particular our late dear friend Werner Son, were always wearing the Ellipse. And I looked at it as kind of this like dated, like these bracelet watches from the 70s and 80s. It was wasn't something that I really that resonated with me at first. And it comes back to that nuance. But as I learned more about it, and I collect Patek Philippe ads, I quickly realized that there's no other watch that dominated, in this case, over 3 decades of advertising and 3 decades of messaging than this one particular shape, the Patek Philippe Ellipse. It was the first time we saw literally a family of not only jewelry for men and women, cufflinks, the famous Patek Philippe Ellipse lighters, pendants. Tanya, you don't have your pendant on today, do you?
I don't
Your
have it
Ellipse
on,
pendant?
but it's next door. I can go and get it.
Wow. Is the obsession that deep then?
Yes. So you could literally have Ellipse. It was just everywhere in the world of Patek Philippe, and getting out of the time period of the Nautilus, which was of the moment, especially 5 years ago. It's like nothing else mattered in the Patek Philippe line. It was all about steel, oversized watches at that point in time. I was really mesmerized by a time, a place of smaller form watches. And Tanya now has this amazing pendant around her neck.
She's gone and brought her Ellipse pendant to show us.
Beautiful.
So this is from 1978, and
Wow.
This is from a designer, a very famous jeweler named Georges L'Enfant,
Cool.
who worked in collaboration with Patek Philippe to make this line of jewelry for men and women. So it was the disco era. Everything went. So
Andy will get one of those.
Thank
I
you,
think,
Tanya, for modeling that. So we had a lot of fun promoting the whole idea of Ellipse as being the ultimate DNA of Patek Philippe, and we're just thrilled now And it did take 5 years that now people are waking up to, and it's not just the Ellipse, the other shapes and forms from the history of Patek Philippe and the history of wristwatch design, that people are really looking at what they can wear and what they can collect in a different way. So it's been a fun journey, and I think it's been a reawakening in the marketplace for how important these watches are to the brand.
What's really been so much fun for John and I was when we were in January, we were in Miami for the watch show there. And it was just as if our dreams had come true, because at last people were coming up and asking to try on an Ellipse, to look at an Ellipse. After years and years of us, it seems like years and years, but 5 years, of us really promoting the Ellipse and trying to encourage people to understand it and understand that a watch doesn't need to be a sports watch, a steel sports watch. It can be so much more. It can be lots of different sizes. It doesn't have to be huge. And we saw men and women trying on the Ellipse, and we saw women trying on men's bracelet watches. We saw men trying on the smaller size Ellipse, which looked so much smaller on than they were used to wearing. But the one definition that we heard time again was, oh, it looks so elegant. And that is a word that we haven't heard for a very long time. And the joy that it gave John and I can't even begin to tell you, because it was like an awakening. People are getting it. They're understanding.
So people are now waking up to the Ellipse, you think? And not just Patek collectors, but more the mainstream collector?
More mainstream, but also I think there's two things that are important there. One, as John mentioned, is accepting that a watch doesn't have to be a certain look, or it doesn't have to be, as I already said, a steel sports watch, or it doesn't have to be round. It can be an unusual shape, and it can be lots of different sizes. I think that's more of an important shift, because that opens up watches for all brands. It's not just for Patek, but to look at watches, particularly from the 60s, 70s, when there was some really fun experimentation going on in design, or look even further back to the 50s, when designers like Gilbert Albert were making really funky looking watches for Patek. And you mentioned Ronnie M earlier. He collects Gilbert Albert watches, and he's another reason why people are beginning to look at these crazy shapes. So I'm saying things like not triangular or trapezoid, just very unusual looking pieces. And people don't realize that Patek was really out there doing all this avant-garde stuff. And it's always thought of as a brand that's very conservative, very classic, which fundamentally it is, but it also experimented.
It had some fun as well. Yeah.
And had fun and did something that no one else was doing. And I think that DNA is critical.
Yeah.
And something that John and I just particularly love is the risks that the brand took and the kind of watches they designed.
Just going on to the Ellipse, do you think that's why people, I wouldn't say a cult following, but it has a following of, it's not everyone, it's just a certain number of people or certain type of appreciator of a watch, in that the impression is Patek did play it safe. They are very Calatrava, that's what Calatrava or Nautilus, then later on Aquanaut. That's the perception that people have. And to see an Ellipse, which is, whoa, what's that? It almost, most of the people who would just want Patek to be Patek in the modern definition of the brand, they would shun that, wouldn't they? And say, look, I don't understand this. This isn't what I want. I want this. And do you think that's why it really resonates with people who do appreciate it and have the pendant you have and the lighter? John made a video of the Ellipse lighter. That's some serious appreciation of a watch. That isn't just, oh, I like this and I'm just going to like it because I want to like it. This is a real, genuine love of it. Do you think that's why it's got that, why people resonate towards it so much? Or do you think, oh, what is it? I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out why there's almost this following. Why is there this following behind it?
I think if we look at the production of the golden ellipse family from Patek Philippe over the last 25 years, so it's a 21st century, there's one thing that's common year after year. Less than 1% of all Patek Philippe production today, even in the year 2000, 2001, less than 1% of production was Ellipse. So this isn't something that's a main part of Patek Philippe's business. If you go back now 40 years, it's a completely different storyline. If you go back 50 years, 1974, it's a completely different storyline, which well over 30% of Patek Philippe's production was Ellipse. So I think the reason it resonates with a lot of people the last few years is because it's new for them. It's novelty. It's a little different. And we're watching the rise of not only values, but interest in some of the more obscure Cartier shaped watches, which I'll tell you, when I was in the auction world in the late 90s, these went for nothing. I mean, there were really huge bargains going back 25 years ago.
Yeah.
So people are now looking at watches in a different way. And they're looking kind of under the stone for that like quirky next best thing. And I think the Ellipse checks the boxes where you can buy a great watch, in some cases under $10,000, that you can put on your wrist and enjoy and have a great story to tell along the way.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect summary. Like, from wearing one myself, I've tried them on numerous occasions, but as soon as you put an Ellipse on your wrist, it's just effortlessly class. It like you could be in a room full of people with the most complex Patek and minute repeaters, etc., and Vacherons and everything else, but it's so effortlessly elegant, like you mentioned, and understated. It just has its own presence, what you just can't dispute whatsoever. It's just got its own kind of presence on the wrist. It's really hard to maybe convey that into words, but when you put one on your wrist, you're like, okay, I get it. I think that's probably the best message. Just go and try one and it will make sense.
That's perfect way of putting it, Andy. Yes, you have to try them on. And I think that's what gave John and I so much joy in January, was seeing people, oh, there's an Ellipse, I want to try that. Or do you have any? Can we try an Ellipse? And to your point, Andy, once it's on your wrist and you feel how well it fits, and then you look at that blue dial that's so mesmerizing, that just changes because it is blued 18 karat gold. The way the light hits it is absolutely beautiful. And yes, it's an elegant watch, but it's different. And I think people are now accepting the fact that there's nothing wrong with wearing a watch that's different. Yeah. You don't have to look like everyone else.
I think you've just sold the watch to me again. So it's a dangerous show.
Yeah, this is our mission. Yeah, we actually sent them an email earlier saying, we're selling this watch to Andy. So this is our mission for today. But moving on to talking about other watches that Patek make, which are, shall we say, alternate shaped. What do you think of the Gondolo? So for me, that's a watch I like. I could see myself one day getting a Gondolo, and it comes in many different. It comes in a tonneau case. It comes in a rectangular case. You can even get almost tank-esque style case. What's your view on that? And again, does that have the same kind of following that the Ellipse has? I personally don't think it has, but what's your take on it?
The gondolas are sleepers today, and we're talking about modern gondola, as the name was reinterpreted in the 90s. Yeah. It really has nothing to do with chronometro gondola, but that's what Patek Philippe chose to brand it in their strategy in the 90s, which is an interesting story in itself. But when we see little tank watches, well, they're not so little now. It's like they're acceptable, like the reference 5010 or the 5014 or later the 5024 from the late 1990s. These are selling for a song right now. And I find it interesting because I look at some of the prices of what Cartier tanks are bringing, and those have skyrocketed. You can get something that's a Patek Philippe case style and movement for often the equivalent amount of money. And that's why I think 1990s gondolas are a good value buy. But going into the 2000s, we see some complicated gondolas. And one I love talking about is the 5135.
Yeah.
Gondolo Calendario, the massive annual calendar, which I that was the first complicated watch in my collection,
Oh,
and a piece that I still enjoy wearing. And it's interesting because it has Cubitus vibes. I mean, everyone, it's like you see going out wearing the Cubitus now. You could get that same look and that same excitement in a 5135. Wow, less than half of the price, and it's an annual calendar. So I think there's hope for the 5135 yet. More recent gondolas like the 5124. We just sold one of those. I mean, I can't find a better rectangular watch with a sapphire back than a 5124 in the market today. So I think to your point, Farm, they're undervalued. They're
yeah.
relatively unknown. People aren't really looking for them yet, but that could be the next best thing. Who knows?
Okay, so I should get mine now then before they
Yes,
skyrocket in price. Okay, I'll make a note of that. But no,
Maybe we'll sell you a Patek one day.
I'll come to New York and we'll see what we can do. We'll see what I can do. See if I can.
All right.
Yeah. See if I haven't spent all my money on the holiday. But no, but no, it's something I've always looked at in the last few years, and I've thought, and again, no one. It's the kind of thing people overlook. Literally, will just like, no, not just not even won't even know it's there. And to me, that kind of it makes me think it's a Patek Philippe. It's a beautiful looking watch. It's a I like rectangular case watches as well, and I don't understand why. Because why can one watch, which is a different shape, be so sought after, and then one which is just a different kind of style be completely, like you say, a sleeper? That it's just almost like, especially now, I think there aren't many sleepers now. I think a lot of gems are being unearthed now, and it just seems quite surprising that is still underground. I find that quite interesting.
Now that we've met on camera, I always like imagining what watch I would love to show you.
Yeah.
And for you, I imagine you wearing a 5098 in platinum. That is a tonneau shaped. It's a nicely sized gondolo. But what's so special about it is it uses traditional 100-year-old techniques to do a true guilloche.
Oh, right. Okay.
On the dial.
Yeah.
So it has like a 1920s vibe to it, but the case size is very, very modern. And I encourage you to try on a 5098 next time you're out and about. There could be one in the Burlington.
A note of
Arcades.
that, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I go there quite frequently, actually. Yeah, all right, I'll check that out. 5098.
His work,
yes.
John's worked you out perfectly.
Well, that's why he is where he is.
He's a modern watch guy, is Palm. So you've nailed it.
Yeah, he's sussed me out. But no, the tonneau shaped cases as well. I do like those. I like the Vacherons as well. That they do the Malte as well. They've got them in the tonneau shaped case. Yeah, very, very. To me, something that really stands out. See, for me, because this is an interesting thing, and I want to share this with you. I generally like sports watches. That's what I like. But I want a dress watch. I have a Cartier Tank Mouste for various reasons, but I want one that, and maybe I'm putting too much pressure on it, if you see what I mean, that I want just this the dress watch that is all I need. And that's a very hard one to find. That kind of delays, when you put, because if I wish I was like you, oh, right, this one, that one, this one, this, whatever, the sky's the limit. But for me, it's like, no, it has to do, it doesn't have to do anything, but it just has to look and make me feel a certain way. Maybe it's a connection with the past or something I need. But yeah, my quest goes on, and hopefully, I'll tell you what, we can talk in the future, and you can maybe pick the perfect dress watch for me.
No, that's your treasure hunt that we were talking about. That's the journey. It's wonderful. You'll find it one day. You'll know the second you see it.
I don't know. I met a friend, and I don't know if you know Mike Stockton from Fratello. He knows John. And he had a beautiful 570 and white gold sword hands. And honestly, it was the simplest looking watch. And I don't know what it was. It was just like I was saying to Andy, I was messaging, look, I don't understand why I like this watch. It's got the most basic Calatrava look. I think he said it was 34 as well, but it didn't wear like a 34. It wore like a 36, 37. It was almost like I could see myself wearing this. This could be like the one for life as a dress watch. And I think being a Patek Philippe as well was a major factor, I think. Also, because I've tried on a few Pateks in my time. I've never had the fortune to be able to buy one yet. I always find myself staring at the name that's been painted on the dial for a long time. And forget the rest of the watch even. It's just like Patek Philippe. I just end up staring at that. And then the Calatrava shape as well. It's just, I don't know what it is. There's just some magic about it. And a dress watch, while I appreciate sports watches, I think that probably is a bit more of a testament to how beautiful a dress watch should be than how much I appreciate the sports watches. But then there you go. That's my little 2 cents worth on my quest.
It sounds like you're getting closer, though.
Yes, it does. It does. I think it's wonderful. 570 is a beautiful watch, isn't it, John? That's a favourite of yours.
Oh, I love it. It's if there was one Calatrava in my life, it would be a 570.
What is it about it? Because I can't put my finger on what it is. For yourself, what is it?
It's. Tanya, I'm going to borrow your soundbite. I hope you don't mind. If you ask a little kid to draw a watch, you know this one? If you ask a little kid to draw a watch, they're essentially going to do the proportions and design of a reference 96. A 96 right now, like the hottest watch out there, but they're 31 millimeters or smaller. They're tiny. But at 35.5 millimeters, the 570 to me is like the very definition of a wristwatch. And you put it on the wrist of someone who's never even worn a mechanical watch in their life, they're like, I could see this. Or someone who's very knowledgeable about watches, like you're going to try that on, and it's just going to feel right. And yes, seeing the logo Patek Philippe does capture one's heart. We've been indoctrinated by years of brilliantly executed propaganda designed by Tanya, and we've been able to really fall in love with that design and of what Patek Philippe represents. So yes, there's an emotional connection to that.
And just another question I have for you. The Calatrava design, a lot of people think that's generic. Was it Patek? Did the Calatrava create that design of watch? Is that where that came from?
Our position historically is yes.
Okay, awesome.
It is debatable, but I've yet to see proof that another brand has designed the Calatrava as we know it today before Patek Philippe did. But, you know, there's probably some watch brand by maybe even American. I could imagine there's probably a Waltham.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, it could be a Waltham.
It has like the exact proportion because that's those swooping lugs is like so simple and so taken for granted. But at that time in the 30s, it was revolutionary. It was different. It's something that the world's never seen before.
Because I think it's important to remember that in 1932, men would have a pocket watch. Ladies were more experimental, ironically, with wristwatches, and they were all sorts of different shapes. And they were interesting to your point, Farm. They were mostly rectangular or tonneau shape. This concept of a round watch, wristwatch, hadn't really been adopted quite as much as you might think, simply because pocket watches were round. So when the concept of wristwatches came in, it was more experimental. Like, what shape is a wristwatch? I don't know what shape it is. So everybody was sort of trying different shapes. And when the Stern family purchased Patek in 1932, the first thing that they wanted to do, which was very smart of them, was to have one watch that was really a quintessential Patek Philippe watch that they would make in series. And they chose this Calatrava design. And it was a very deliberate choice by them. It was given a reference number, as John already mentioned, the 96, which up until that point, the reference numbers didn't really exist in a watch would be made and it would be given a reference number, but there wasn't a series. Like, you'd know the 96 was the Calatravas. Yeah. You just knew. We've all been conditioned to know that now. So historically, it's so important. The design is so important. It's something that we take for granted. And yes, if you ask a child, what does a watch look like? They'll draw that.
Calatrava.
It's true. No, because every dress watch instantly that's the shape you'll go for. Yeah, a tank was going a bit, left of field. Now, maybe back then it wasn't. That it was doing it. The Calatrava way was going left of field, but it.
And if you ever saw a kid draw an ellipse as like the shape of what a wristwatch would look like, they'd probably be like removed from the class.
What's this?
Yeah, I was that kid. Yeah.
This
I was
kid's
going
no
to say,
good.
John, based on what you told us earlier, yeah.
I still love that story, though.
Similar
That
story.
is brilliant. Yeah. That's the best story I've heard, because everyone's, everyone has quite a regular, generic kind of, not generic, but most people have the same experience.
Never heard that.
Because they normally say, my father collected watches, or my grandfather collected watches. No, the Bangkok red light district.
Yeah. No, my father took me to the red light district in Bangkok to get KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken, as it was known back then, and I saw a fake one.
That's the lead story of the day.
It's very unique.
That's awesome.
It's a very unique story. The Calatrava talks really given me. I had my first Patek Philippe was a 5119R, and I regretted. Unfortunately, I regret that I sold it now. So I've got some Patek remorse from this show now.
It really is.
Anyway,
painful, and we've all been there.
Horrible.
We've all experienced it.
The worst.
Ooh, yes, that's a tough one.
It was too early in my watch journey. Like me and Palm spoken about this many times, but I didn't really know. I knew it was an important watch, but I didn't really appreciate what I had. As if I had it now today, I'd really appreciate what it is. But anyway,
the funny story is what he actually bought when he sold it.
Oh, actually, no, that wasn't. It wasn't too. It wasn't too bad. No, it went to a Tudor Submariner and a Cartier tank. The Roboto came later.
Right, okay,
yeah, don't worry, that was later.
I thought it was that Roboto watch. All right, I thought.
Yeah, we keep that
I
one
always
quiet.
make that association. This is the man who sold a Patek for a Roboto.
Yeah, nobody. Yeah, edit that out. Yeah. But getting into your story a little bit, Tanya. So this one's a bit more specifically for yourself, and just because I know our listeners would love to hear your story a bit more. Could you? I know you've shared already a key milestone, but throughout your career at Patek, could you share some of the key moments throughout that journey? Like, what was one of the biggest milestones while you were there, and what was it like also to work with Philippe Stern? Because we don't really know much about the characters behind Patek Philippe sometimes. So, do you have any cool stories maybe to share?
Just to start with Philippe Stern, I feel very blessed that I had that time to work with him. And as I mentioned earlier, it was because the company was much smaller and it was much easier to do that. And it's, John and I have covered this quite a lot, that the 90s was very pivotal for Patek. And that was because that was when Philippe Stern was really leading the company, and he realized that he had to change a lot to turn it into the company that it is today. And that was marketing. It needed to be a better known brand. And again, people listening to this podcast, I'm sure, cannot believe that truly not that long ago in the 90s, Patek was not the name it is today. It was not as well known. And so he really appreciated marketing, and he really backed up any marketing. So that was pivotal. But I think probably there's a couple of lovely times I had with Philippe Stern. The first one was standing on literally what was a cement block that was the base of what is now Plan-les-Ouates, which is the workshops of Patek Philippe. And that was before they were built. It was literally just a concrete surface that had been laid down before anything else was built. And standing with him on that, and him saying, this is where I'm going to build the next workshops. This is the future of Patek Philippe. And it was unbelievable, because at that time, Plan-les-Ouates was sort of in the outskirts of Geneva. You had to drive there to get there. Whereas all the workshops in Geneva were relatively close to each other in central downtown Geneva. And so we drove out and we went to this countryside. And anyone who's been to Plan-les-Ouates now knows it's not the countryside. It's full of watchmakers. Rolex is there. All of them are there in this one area. But I can remember standing on a concrete block in a field before anyone else was there with Philippe Stern and just feeling his personal pride and ambition is something that I'll never forget. And I feel very privileged to have experienced that for sure. Absolutely. And then the other time was the opening of the museum in Geneva. I was very fortunate. I sat next to him at that and at the dinner. And again, this pride from a very humble man. I really want to stress that he is a very humble man, and humility was always something that was important to him. But there he had achieved something so extraordinary. It was this magnificent temple to watches, not just Patek, as anyone who's been to the museum will know, because Philippe has a great passion for enameled timepieces. So he'd been collecting early enameled pieces from the 1600s, 1700s, all of which are on display at the museum. Simply mind-blowing. So yes, that was a very important thing. And Philippe Stern's mother was there. It was a family occasion. It was a very intimate, important occasion, even though it was a very high-profile occasion. All the top collectors were there. Everyone was there, and the retailers. It was very personal to him. And so that's my privilege. And I think I probably covered two sides with those examples of pivotal moments. I mean, I've been very public about a couple that people will know, which was when the ad agency presented to us the ad with the tagline, "You never actually own a Patek, you merely take care of it for the next generation." And just knowing that second that was it. And again, that's a similar thing to when you've been on your treasure hunt and you found your watch. So when you find your dress watch, that will be the moment that you will remember that you have found it at last. And, as human beings, we're always on a quest, aren't we, to have that pivotal moment of the light bulb goes off or whatever it is. So yes, I feel extraordinarily privileged to have had such memories of Patek. That is it's not necessarily different from how it is today, but it was a different time because it was a much smaller company. And we were having to try so hard to be known, really so hard.
It's almost unbelievable to her, but it really is.
Yes, it really is. And, people don't believe me when I say, when I first started working for Patek, if somebody asks me, what do you do for your job? What's your job? And I say, I work for Patek Philippe. And they go, what's that? Not even, they just have never heard of it. It was so alien to everybody.
Yeah, it's hard. It's really difficult to, even for myself, to wrap my head around that. Because as I've gotten into the watch industry and into watches in general, Patek was always that's it. You have a Patek, you've achieved. You can't go beyond that, So it is crazy just to think in the 90s, but that perception wasn't the same. It's hard to comprehend, to be honest with you. And I think that's a testament to your skills in the marketing department. So hats off to you there.
Oh, well, you're very... I wish I could take credit, but...
It's all Tania,
I wish it was all me, imagine.
The woman who taught a generation about Patek Philippe, apparently.
That's because I'm so old, and I know who gave that quote. she thought I was so old.
Right, okay. Right, so I just want to put that question to John. So you have, had quite an illustrious career in what you've done with Patek and collectability. You were a buyer once for Patek, is that right? And you'd go on a hunt for historical pieces that they could keep in their...
No, that would be a dream job, though. You just described what I would will into existence. But I was never a buyer for them. I was in sales, and during my time working officially for Patek Philippe, there's two of us that covered the country as essentially sales reps. So we'd balance inventories, we'd do trainings, we would assist the retailers in presenting Patek Philippe in the best light possible. During that period, I was often shown great vintage watches. The head of service in New York at that time was a gentleman named David Jarrett, who would always, when he would get a great watch, he would run over, and because he knew I really appreciate it, he'd show me, like, look at this, it's a world time from 1953. Wow. And we would just love looking at these pieces that were coming from families being serviced for generations. And I mean, his eyes wide open that there's all these great watches that haven't surfaced yet publicly at auction or with dealers because the families are truly keeping them for the next generation. And when you have the privilege to work for Patek Philippe, you're allowed to hear these stories of these pieces that it's not about the money, it's not about the value, it's about the story, it's about the family's legacy that lives within each of these timepieces. And that kind of purity was the treasure hunt of my life that kept my heart beating during that time period. But unfortunately, I wasn't buying for the museum or anything that wonderful.
John, you just made a really important point about why somebody would buy a Patek. And certainly even, when I started, which as we all know was before electricity was even invented, the age of somebody who would buy a Patek would be in their 50s, because you had to have made it financially. And then you would buy a Patek for an important reason. So it'd be, I made partner at my law firm, or I became CEO, or some significant reason. And it's different now. People buy fine timepieces, actually, still to celebrate something, but we're seeing younger people coming in now who are buying watches. And your whole podcast, Palm and Andy, is about buying watches and this whole interest in watches, and including fine timepieces. There was, for most of wristwatch history, was something that, you'd buy one watch. You wouldn't have lots of different watches. You wouldn't trade them. You wouldn't flip them. You wouldn't do anything like that. You'd have your one watch that was bought for a special reason. Just as, I don't know if this is cultural, but obviously we've got 3 English people, but British people here, when I was young, for your 18th or your 21st, you got a watch. And if your parents could afford a really nice watch, then you got a really nice watch that you'd keep for the rest of your life, practically. But that's so different now.
It is very different now. But it's surprising. So when you say back in the day, if you became partner at your law firm, or a real a huge achievement. So was it more old worldy circles knew about it, and it was, or what was it? Was it a well kept secret? Well,
it was. I think well kept secret is a very nice way of putting it. But yes, it was people who were privileged to know what a Patek Philippe was.
Okay.
And it was for that reason that Philippe Stern felt it was so important to market out beyond those privileged few who knew that once you've made a milestone, that's the ultimate. That's what you're going to spend your money. You're going to put the money into a Patek. And you're absolutely right. It was just a few privileged people, a well-kept secret.
Okay.
And Philippe Stern's desire, not just through marketing, but through the types of watches that he had Patek start to make. We haven't really talked about that, but there was the Calatrava that everybody knew, the time-only watch. And then there was this massive jump up to a complicated timepiece, which had a really big increase in price. And Philippe Stern was smart to bring in this mid-range watch, which was what initially in John and my time was called a small complication, but now is called a complication. Okay. And the other watches are grand complications. So he saw that you had to offer people more. And then there's something for everybody then.
Yeah, where did the 3970 fit into that then, in terms of complications and grand? Is that the pinnacle of Patek Philippe? Not the most complicated, but is that the most sought after complicated watch by Patek, or what would you say about that?
At that time period, it was the top of the food chain of regular production. There were, of course, repeaters that we started to see in the late 1980s that would surpass the price point of a perpetual chrono. But traditionally, like during the early 80s, is $24.99, then the transition to $39.70. That was the piece at the top of the food chain. And that was interesting how then the 3940 was like the next level below without the chronograph. But having an automatic perpetual was something that was very usable watch. But as Tanya's saying, once the annual calendars came in the late 90s, that opened it up to a whole new buying pool in 1996 that could afford a 5035. And Tanya, weren't they like $22,000?
Yes, they were 22, 23, yes. I mean, that's still a lot of money, of course. But the jump to a 3940 or a 3970, we're talking 40, 50 plus thousand, was an enormous amount of money. So yes, it gave people an opportunity to step up, basically.
When did that all switch? When did it suddenly not become the best kept secret or not too elitist, and it became more available to, okay, maybe more new money and more popular and a bit more showy? When exactly did that happen?
Well, one of them is what John's wearing. One of the reasons is what John is wearing.
The Aquanaut.
The Aquanaut. And the other is the 24 for the ladies. Sort of late 90s. They came out with 2 timepieces, one for the ladies, one for men, that were priced under $10,000. And they were priced artificially low to do just that, to open the market to more people. The theory behind the 24, which was the ladies' steel watch with diamonds on the bezel, was here's a watch that a woman can buy herself. So that was revolutionary, because women at that time were not traditionally buying themselves a watch. They might want a Cartier tank because they knew what a Cartier tank was, but it was normally a man would buy a woman a watch and it was his choice, and it might not be what the lady wanted. So here was a watch specifically designed for a woman that retailed, was it around about 7,000, John? 7,800 or something like that?
I remember 6,300.
You do? Okay, so there you go. And here you were getting a Patek Philippe bracelet watch with diamonds. It was so exciting. And I can remember very clearly when that watch came out at Basel, the retailer excitement was extraordinary, because they knew here was a watch that was going to open up a whole new area of customers. And then for men, a year later came the Aquanaut, which was deliberately designed to bring people into the brand, new people, younger people into the brand. Unfortunately, that didn't happen because all the established Patek Philippe owners wanted the Aquanaut for their weekend watch, for their fun watch, for their sports watch. Both of those watches were hugely successful straight out of the gate. So that changed, I would say, a lot, because here was a younger, more diverse client coming into the brand. Would you agree with that, John?
It just changed the concept to where people, yes, there were people buying that, to kind of choke the supply because the existing clientele just needed to have it. But the younger people still wanted it, and everybody wanted to have it. Yeah. They had money. So all of a sudden we started to see a resale market, which really didn't exist as we know it until the late 90s, where that spike in secondary values started. But that still, I mean, even there was I would say a simmering of that kind of marketplace up until 2008, where there was the concept of resale. But no one was buying watches to flip and make money. Yeah. Right? That was just non-existent. And in 2008, economic crisis, the market crashed. Price points went down dramatically. So what we all know is our reality is a new reality. I have to always remind that to myself that yes, it's all about stories and how much we love the watches, but there's that other storyline, values and resale values and waiting list and what's my watch worth, which is the question that drives me nuts, which we hear all the time.
All the time, yeah.
And that is a new reality for all of us that we're currently living in. And I love having conversations around what was it like before.
Yeah.
Because maybe the future will be like it was before. We'll see.
That actually segues nicely into my question, because mine's more around the auction scene. So I'm curious from your perspective, from when you first started getting involved in that part of the industry. Like, how's it evolved to where it is today, and what would you say you miss about the past, and what's better about the scene today?
I feel like I lived two lives in the auction world, and there's just a whole different life today. My first life was in the 90s. The auction world was very different. We were the watch and clock department at Sotheby's. It wasn't a bunch of wristwatches. There were auctions that were full of clocks, watches, meaning pocket watches, and wristwatches. It was very divided. Like the wristwatch sales that we all look at today didn't exist. The consigners were mostly dealers, and the buyers were split between dealers and I'd say a splattering of private buyers. It was just small. It's the only way I could describe it. When I went back into auction after a decade at Patek Philippe, things changed a bit. So in like 2012, 2013, things were picking up, records were breaking. Every auction just seemed like, wow, it surpassed the last. And we're still in that cycle of like, just, whoa, what's next? And what kind of price points are we going to see? What kind of records are we going to see fall? Where it became a competitive sport among private buyers and the consigners. A lot of people, which were also, we'll call them gentleman dealers, like half collector, half dealer. It's a term we used back then. Today would be a bit different, but it was just different. It was just it was like a commercial festival of wealth. It'd be a good way of looking at how it was during that era. And now, especially after the run up during COVID, some of those auctions were just unimaginable. The prices that things were bringing, but the competitive nature of individual collectors in the global marketplace was something I couldn't have imagined in the 90s. And what's so funny is back in the 90s, I remember having conversations with folks that were around in the 70s and 80s, and it was just a different marketplace. And I saw someone posted something on Instagram today. I wish I can give a shout out, but it was describe your version of heaven. And their version of heaven was attending a watch trade show in 1981. And that spoke to me. Because if I could go back in time in 1981 and be like, I'll take a few Daytonas, some Paul Newmans, 2499s. Oh, that 1518 steel. Yeah, I'll take one of those too. That is heaven right there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Truly.
So you'd say it's a lot more of a competitive environment these days to which it was before.
Yes. It's a big shift where in the auction room, and going back to 10 years ago, I would know who the bidders were. You could almost predict what prices things would land. There was an occasional surprise, but it was very predictable. Now when I go into an auction room and speaking to people that are still in the auction industry, completely unpredictable. There's always a new player. There's always someone bidding online, someone bidding on the phone, which we'll never know their name, that are pushing prices to levels that are just previously unimaginable. Just even the last auction scene in November in Geneva, just watching FP Journe prices and mysterious phone bidders just throwing out bids, jumping $1 million increments. I mean, and we were all guessing, of course, who was on the phone, and it turned out I was wrong, but you just never know what the new blood is going to do and what new price points will be broken. So I'll be over there in Geneva for the next round of auctions, and all of us will just be guessing, like, what's going on. And yes, there'll be bargains. Yes, there'll be prices that are correct for what it's worth. And yes, there'll be prices that are just extraordinarily beyond imagination.
It really is crazy. You can't help but wonder, is it these secret callers have a link to the brand in some way, and it's to raise the brand's profile on the main stage? But we keep. And I think those games might be gone because no brand is going to be bidding $3-4 million on their watch. Like, no marketing budget's that big. But I'm always wondering, like, what's going on, and that's why they're so entertaining. It's the best reality TV. So. But just like reality TV, you can't believe what you see. So
it's sometimes the sales don't actually occur. All the behind the scenes you'll never know. And that is very important. When I have people quoting auction results to me, I was like, that's great, but there's a lot more to the story that you don't know, or maybe I don't know. Yes.
Right. We normally finish by now, but we've overrun, but it doesn't matter. This is going to be the longest show we've ever made because it's the most interesting, most fascinating. We love all our guests who've been on before, but this, pull up and make yourselves a coffee or something, listeners, and we're going to go on for a little bit longer. Have a pause, take a pause, and then come back. I have one more question myself. So I want to talk about the Collectability Podcast. Being a podcaster, it's of huge interest to me. Collectability, the brand you made of selling the watches, was to make Patek Philippe watches more available to people and accessible to clients who are interested in the brand. The actual podcast, it's very niche. It's all Patek Philippe, yet you've carried it on for years and you've kept it interesting and you've got that energy. Like, I didn't used to watch the YouTube version until recently. I was always listening on Spotify or audio only, and I thought, I bet these two guys are always smiling when they're talking, and I can vouch for that to the listeners who can't see. They are always smiling, and once I saw the YouTube, I thought, okay, I've been proved right. The genuine passion you have, the interest you have, and the education you give as well. Some of the guests you have on, like Tania, you had the guy who fixed Big Ben on recently, but it just covers such fascinating topics. It's almost like grown-up subjects as well. It's not the silliness. It's not the fast food McDonald's of podcasting. It really is a real sophisticated meal, and I always enjoy it. And what was your purpose when you started it off? How did it start first? What in your mind? What were you hoping to do, and how did you make it all come together?
Over to you, Tanya.
Oh, was it Tanya? Oh, God, John. Oh, no. I thought this was John's.
I'll take
No.
it.
No, go on. It is both of yours, yes. And that's open to both of you. Sorry. Yeah.
It's both of us. But I can just say from what was the reason behind it. I mean, our tagline is an education in vintage Patek Philippe. So John and I are all about scholarship, education. We feel very, very strongly that if you're buying a vintage Patek, you really need to understand what you're buying. And well armed is well informed. So the podcasts were really an extension of that. And it's a wonderful opportunity for both John and I, mostly John, obviously, to talk to people in the industry who could help educate. We want to educate our listeners. And if somebody has something interesting to say based on their experience, we love to draw that out. And I cannot thank you enough, and I'm sure John feels the same, for your kind
your
words about our podcast, because that's something that's so important to us.
Thank you. And the theme tune is we were talking about this off air earlier on, and I because I wanted to get as many episodes in as I could before we spoke. And it was ringing around in my head, and I kept hearing chimes. If you listen to the theme, it just goes with everything they talk about. It's such a, I don't want to say cool because that sounds too hip and trendy. It's not that. It's just educational yet fun and such a good energy.
I'd like to add, I love listening to NPR. I think you do too, Tanya, right? And listening to Terry Gross on NPR and like how she interviews
I do. I listen
some guests that I'm like, I have absolutely no interest in this topic whatsoever, but I listen and I learn something new, and I somehow connect. The goal of our podcast is to have that kind of magic of the unexpected, the human story, combined with learning something that's useful to you in your Patek Philippe collecting journey. So whoever it is, you're going to hear something that you'll be like, oh, I know that person, or I could connect in some way, shape, and form on the difficulties they had, whether it was early on in their career or mistakes they made through collecting. Recently, I interviewed someone who's a dear friend, a collector named Mark Berliner, and I've had so many people call and say, yes, I've made the same mistakes he did. And it's so hard to let go of those watches that are mistakes and taking that loss. But you know what? That's just like the beginner's tax that we all pay. And whether you're listening to other dealers such as like Davide Parmigiani, or listening to Ben Clymer, or Osvaldo Patrizzi, who's a legend in the auction world, there's always something you could learn and connect with. And our goal the last 3-4 years is really to share some of these big personalities in the world. And you're going to see a pivot over the next year, really specifically like offering tools for your collecting journey of whatever that might be. For example, our latest podcast is on a collector's guide on the 3970. So you might not be looking for a 3970, but by listening or watching this podcast, you'll be able to learn of kind of how we go about being in the industry 24/7, how we assess a watch, how we not only assess the condition of case dial movement, how we assess rarity, and most importantly, how we assess the marketplace of why something is priced where it is. Now, you could take that no matter what you collect and kind of use that, we'll call it collector's language, in a way that gives you collectability, which is kind of at the heart and soul of what we're doing with education. And that's fun. We have people suggesting guests to us all the time, and we welcome that. But some guests that we've been suggested, I just know they're going to come out and they're just going to be trying to sell you all day long. And we don't want to have the guests that want to sell you. We want the guests that want to share and absolutely give you some tools that you could use in your collector's journey. So thanks again for your eloquent words of what we're trying to do. I think you said it better than Tanya and I can describe it.
I'll send you the transcript afterwards.
Yes.
I'll see the bill as well. Yeah.
Maybe a nice one to finish. We kind of touched on this, but just maybe now, I hope by now, for all our listeners who have made it this far, their curiosity in Patek Philippe has been sparked. However, maybe they go on Chrono 24, they see the prices, and start to think, well, forget about it. Would you say, are there any hidden gems still within the Patek catalogue which you could recommend? New vintage, like certainly in Barcelona, there's a big vintage scene here. Like, is there any vintage gems? What be a nice start for a Patek journey, which aren't overinflated yet? Do they still exist? We
haven't discussed pocket watches, so I have to give my 30-second elevator pitch on pocket watches. I think that there are a few things in the world you could buy under 5,000 US that has such value, tradition, history than a vintage Patek Philippe pocket watch. Increasingly, we're selling to women pendant watches, smaller pendant watches, which could be worn as like a brooch or on a chain, which look absolutely fantastic. Men, I'm increasingly, it is not very common, seeing men wearing pocket watches. And it's just kind of fun when you're at a dinner and you can take something to pass around a table when you're all showing like, what watch do you have to wear? For a Patek Philippe pocket watch you just bought for $4,500 that has an archive and a history, you know, when it was born. That's really interesting, exciting, and I find to be, I think, the best value of any physical object you could buy today in the world.
That's great advice. So vintage Patek Philippe pocket watches would be a good start.
Is there a wristwatch?
And for anybody who wants a
$1 million
wristwatch,
question.
Yeah.
It used to be ellipses. Ellipses were a good start.
Gondolos.
In the old days.
Yeah.
Gondolos, yeah.
Yeah, I actually think gondola gondola wristwatches from the 90s are a fantastic.
Any particular reference that you'd recommend?
5010 and 5014. It's on the smaller side. If you want a larger watch, 5024.
Okay.
Those are complete sleepers from that era. But also, if you prefer a round and a 96, it might be a little too much, or a 570 is a bit too much because they've gone up. I highly recommend looking at 3796s. That is just such a beautiful 1990s staple Calatrava, and what a great look on the wrist for a really nice price point.
Brilliant.
So
we haven't missed it yet. We haven't missed
still
that
pick
boat
up.
just
Yeah.
yet.
There are still opportunities out there.
Yeah.
That's me and Pam on
Breaking the
Chrono
piggy bank
24 straight after the show.
Well, what about collectability?
Oh yeah,
Don't
forget Chrono
what
24.
happened
I'm
last
on
time?
collectability.
The main
Yes.
people here, Andy.
Of course. Yeah. Exactly, that's true.
Right. I think that is unfortunately all we have time for, and it pains me to say it. But thank you so much, John and Tania, for being awesome guests, exceptionally educational and just good fun. Big smiles and good fun.
Thank you very much.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and I have a favor to ask of each of you to thank you, Parm and Andy. I really want to give you each one of these hats. So you have to send me some addresses to send you some of the coveted collectability Ellipse hats, and also, and I leave it up to you. I'd like to send. I gave it to you or directly to one of your listeners. I'd love to give a hat.
You deserve a hat.
Made it into this hour and a half plus discussion into all things collectability. You deserve more than a hat. So maybe you could pick someone randomly from your comments and let me know who to send.
Thank
That's
you.
this is the
Thank you
longest
so
podcast
much.
Thank you
we've done.
for listening.
Oh, really? This is the longest
I think
we've
it's the
done.
longest we've done. So,
It's good.
but that's perfect.
Good synergy there.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So if our listeners have made it this far, go to the episode page on our website, which, to remind you, www.chronopassion7.com. On there, you'll find the show notes for this episode with all the pieces we've spoken about, all the links to collectability, of course, as well, the podcast, the video podcast, and their website. And please drop a comment on the episode page on our website. And if you drop the comment there, we will select one of our listeners at random to win the hat. How does that sound?
Your own collectability hat. Your very own.
Brilliant. So I will sign off very quickly. Hasta luego. Adios from Barcelona. It's been an absolute pleasure. Tania and John, thank you so much for joining us and staying with us for this length of time.
Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Thank you. And as Andy says goodbye from Barcelona in Spain, as Tania and John say farewell from New York in the United States, New York and New Jersey in the United States, from London, it's Toodle Pip and laters, and we'll see you and you'll hear us in the next one.